Transparency International's report seems to have punctured the anti-corruption drive of the Buhari government after the report says Nigeria lacks in fighting graft. And after a meeting of the Southwest governors with the Vice President Yemi Osinbajo and the Attorney General of the Federation, alongside the Southwest governors, Operation Amotekun appears to have gotten a green light. Hello everyone and welcome to the program. This is Politics Today live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Wakimale at Channels Television's global headquarters in Lagos. So much to talk about tonight on the program. So little time that we have. So don't blink because everything is going to come so fast. So brace up everyone and let's get started. Former presidential candidate of the YPP and a former deputy governor of the central bank, Professor Kingsley Moghalu, is asking for an urgent reforms of Nigeria's electoral reforms. Today, in a statement, Professor Moghalu, leading a group called To Build a Nation, is spearheading a non-partisan citizens campaign for 1 million signatures to petition the National Assembly for fundamental electoral reform in Nigeria. The group has written separate letters addressed to the Senate President Nat'l and Femi Gbajabiamila, the Speaker of the House of Representatives. In it, Professor Moghalu stated, he says, he's writing to petition the National Assembly on the need to immediately ensure the fundamental reform of the legal framework governing our electoral process in order to safeguard our democracy and to strengthen our democratic institution. Moghalu says that he has since resigned his membership of the YPP in October of 2019 and convened To Build a Nation in order to campaign for electoral and political reform on a non-partisan basis. Now, a former governor of Imo State and a member representing Imo West Senatorial District, Senator Rochas Okorocha, has been reacting to the recent controversies trailing the Amotekun security outfit in the southwest region of the country. Speaking to our correspondent in Owerri, the Imo State capital, the lawmaker says it is rather unfortunate that Amotekun is generating so much controversy in the country. And this is because, according to him, there is so much suspicion going on in the country which does not reflect that Nigeria is a united country. He says the problem of the Amotekun is more of communication gap which is lacking between the initiators of the Amotekun and the federal government. On the Supreme Court ruling on the Imo governorship election, the former governor says the PDP in Imo State has no moral justification to discredit the Supreme Court ruling because it's not in their favor, insisting that ab initio, the PDP governorship candidate Emeka Ihedioha did not win the election. Take a listen to Senator Okorocha.
This Nigeria is our country, and we must build Nigeria. So this fear of sectional, regional secessions has always been there in this country. And I think maybe, I'm not too sure, maybe that's the angle the federal government is coming from. But sometimes communication is very, very important, to be able to tell what you feel. But it seems we're not discussing the main issue. We're just trying to play politics around it again. And nobody's hitting the nail on the head. And when some of us speak the thing, people get to misunderstand it. I think there's need for communication. There's definitely a communication gap. And I'm sure, 100% sure, the federal government does not understand the intention of Amotekun. It's all about communication. There are many wrong ways to do a right thing, and there are many right ways to do a wrong thing. So I think we need to create a department of communication. This is a problem. There's so much communication gap in this country that even sometimes good intentions are misconstrued because they're not properly communicated to the people.
Senator Rochas Okorocha there speaking on what he thinks is wrong in what has happened on the Amotekun agenda. But more on that Amotekun matter and what transpired at a meeting, the closed-door meeting of the Southwest governor with the Vice President and the Attorney General of the Federation, after we have looked at some of the political stories we are following for you tonight on the program. Let's now check our political roundup.
Vice President Yemi Osinbajo today presided over the first National Economic Council meeting for 2020 with several governors in attendance, including the new governor of Imo State, Mr. Hope Uzodinma, and the Supreme Court vindicated governors of Benue and Sokoto states. Also in attendance were the governors of the southwestern states of Ekiti, Ondo, and Osun states, while the governors of Lagos, Ogun, and Oyo were represented by their deputies. Speaking to State House correspondents after the meeting, Governor Nat'l El-Rufai of Kaduna State says topping the agenda at the meeting is the update on the review of the ownership structure of power distribution companies in Nigeria and the leveraging of pension funds for long-term infrastructure development. Elsewhere, the Independent National Electoral Commission has also concluded all arrangements for Saturday's supplementary and rerun elections in Zaki and Gamawa federal constituencies of Bauchi State. Sensitive materials comprising result sheets and ballot papers have been distributed to the respective local government area offices for onward delivery to the registration area centers and polling units. The federal government today arraigned the former Attorney General of the Federation, Mr. Mohammed Adoke, on a 42-count charge of fraud and money laundering. He and 6 others have already pled guilty to the charges. Having entered a plea of not guilty in all the 42-count charge against former AGF and Minister of Justice Mohammed Adoke and 6 others, Justice Idris Kuchigi has fixed Monday, January the 27th for trial. The court also ordered that the defendants be remanded in EFCC custody pending the hearing and determination of their bail application on Monday. Days after the People's Democratic Party embarked on a nationwide protest over the Supreme Court judgment that annulled the election of Emeka Ihedioha as Imo State Governor, the Edo State chapter of the party has also joined the fray. Some party members in the state who delivered a communique following a peaceful rally in Benin City, the Edo State capital, also seek the signing of the bill amending the Electoral Act into law, as this, they believe, will reduce cases of irregularities pre, during, and post-election in the country.
Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. I told you earlier, it's going to be fast-paced and also so much to talk about. Before we get into our major discussion for tonight, let's tell you that there's been some headway on the security outfit set up by the Southwest governors, codenamed Operation Amotekun. There was a closed-door meeting of the governors of the Southwest region with the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, with the Attorney General of the Federation in attendance, and also the IG of Police after the meeting. The chairman of the Southwest governors, the governor of Ondo State, Rotimi Akeredolu, says that the Ministry of Justice and the Attorney General of the Federation was misquoted on the fact that the federal government had no intention or at no time declared Amotekun illegal. He says the federal government and the Southwest governors have agreed to set up a legal framework to enhance their operation of Amotekun.
We are going to have the legal framework to back this Amotekun, and this legal framework is going to be one in which all of us will look at, and we'll be sure that it goes without any hindrance. What I believe our resolution is that, look, Amotekun is there. Amotekun will have to, the federal government is starting community policing, and it's more of in essence, really, it's about community policing. So we're going to work together and see the community policing and Amotekun work in a way.
So it looks so much that Amotekun is now out of the cage. Now, let's get to our conversation for tonight. Not a good time for the Buhari government, because just imagine when you have an agenda and there is an independent report saying that you are not doing well. That's not a good thing, is it? Nigeria is now ranked 146 out of the 180 countries on the 2019 Corruption Perception Index published by Transparency International, having dropped 2 places. According to the report released today, the country scored 26 out of 100 points, dropping from the 27 points that it has maintained since 2017. It shows that there is a drop. In the 2018 index, Nigeria rose by 4 places from 148 to 144. The index ranks 180 countries and territories by their perceived levels of public sector corruption, in the opinion of experts and business people, using a scale of 0 to 100, where 0 means highly corrupt, and 100 means very clean. According to the report, our analysis, according to Transparency International in their words, quote, our analysis also suggests that reducing big money in politics and promoting inclusive political decision-making are essential to curb corruption, from fraud that occurs at the highest levels of government to petty bribery that blocks access to basic public services like healthcare and education. Citizens are fed up with corrupt leaders and institutions. Let's get started on the conversation tonight, shall we? I have joining me from our Abuja studio a special advisor to the president on the issues of corruption and white-collar corruption, Mr. Abiodun Haihomu from our Abuja studio. Mr. Yabagisani is the national president and the former presidential candidate of the ADP. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming on tonight. Let me begin by asking Mr. Haihomu, how does this come to your government? Because I know there's been a lot of talks on what the government is doing. This is one of the main agenda of the Buhari government. Transparency International has come out to say it's a woeful performance. So my question is that how does this come to the Buhari government, considering the efforts that you have made in fighting corruption? Transparency International says, look, what you have done over the last 1 year is woeful.
Well, we do not see the rating or the report of the Transparency International as meaning that our performance or the government's performance has been woeful. Well, Transparency International has done well by putting corruption on the global map. But that does not mean that Transparency International is infallible or its assessment is not without errors, like any human assessment. I mean, there are validity issues and there are methodological concerns, which not only Nigeria has expressed, but globally, people have expressed concern about some of these criteria. You know, when you have a body that looks at a human concept from a global prism without paying attention or particular focus on context that varies from place to place, you know, that is not to say that we have succeeded in fighting corruption totally in Nigeria. But I mean, as a government that is serious and is committed to getting results, we know that corruption is a challenge in Nigeria. The government is committed to it and dealing with it. So if we moved, even by the index, 1 point this year, and if you see the focus has been on electoral spending. 2019 was an election year for us in Nigeria. So you have to factor that into the assessment or into the report. So the government has gotten the report, will look at it, will study it, and will make necessary adjustments as may be necessary.
So, I mean, we'll go on a break, but I'd like to, just in a few seconds before and you lead us into that break, then I'll come back to Alhaji Yabagisani because he's an opposition leader in the country, and perhaps you'll get their view. But if Transparency International has graded you poor, how would you grade yourself in government if you don't agree with Transparency International's report?
Sure. As a lawyer, it may be, it is ordinarily funny when you want to be a judge in your own cause, but you can't say the things that you have done. Even on this index, the highest point that Nigeria has had historically is 28. We are coming from a country that at some point had 6.9 or less than 7. You and I know the efforts of this current government.
Apologies because I'm being told that we need to go on our first traditional break. We need to take some message, but when we come back, I'll allow you to land on that thought, then get to Alhaji Yabagisani to hear his views on that. We'll take a break, and when we come back, everyone, what does this mean for Nigeria, corruption, and Transparency International's report? Don't go anywhere. We'll talk more when we return from this break. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. We should look at some of the recommendations made by Transparency International. Tonight, we're looking at corruption in Nigeria, the effort of the Buhari government. Don't forget, 3 things President Buhari said he wanted to do in his first term, and he also insisted that they continue with it in the second term. First, security. The second one is the issue of economy, and the third one is fighting corruption. Look at some of the key recommendations made by the Corruption Perception Index on Nigeria. Let's get back to the conversation. And let me allow Mr. Biodun Ayithomu, who is a special advisor to the president on the issues of corruption. Alhaji Yabagi Sani is the presidential candidate of ADP and also the national chairman of that party, has been in our Abuja studio. Mr. Ayithomu, let me allow you to land on that thought, and let's get a view of Alhaji Yabagi Sani. You were saying that you don't want to grade yourself, but do you think you have done well?
Shehu, what is not in doubt is that Nigeria is faced with endemic corruption. When you have endemic corruption in any society, corruption is the rule and not the exception. So it is, in fact, when people are not corrupt, they are the exception. So it becomes difficult to measure progress in numerical terms. But what we are saying, and what everybody, including greatest critics of this government, will say, is that we may not be flying at the moment, but we are not crawling, we are walking.
I mean, but Mr. Ayithomu, apologies to butt in again. How do you react to those who say that, in fact, some members of your party who had come out to say that corruption in this government is worse than it was 10 years ago?
That is a political statement. If you say corruption in this government is more than what it used to be, you have to substantiate this allegation. Then we can respond appropriately.
Okay, let me allow Alhaji Yabagi Sani to come into the conversation. Alhaji Yabagi Sani, this is a corruption perception index about Nigeria. Activities of government, private sector, the public sector. Are you surprised that we dropped points on how we're perceived either as a corrupt nation or as an improved nation in terms of fighting corruption?
Well, I believe what the Transparency International has come up with is something that I think the government of President Buhari should be thankful, for an international body like that coming out with an objective assessment of the performance of the government, so that I think what the government should do after hearing of this, which is true, because every Nigerian and every discerning observer of what is happening in Nigeria knows that Nigeria is still running in vicious cycle as far as issue of corruption, issue of security, and the issue of the economy itself, growing, to match the expectation of the promise of this economy. So I think Transparency International has come out with this, observation to get the government to sit up and then tackle those things that they themselves know are bedeviling, the progress of the economy. Because what is at stake really is the economy of this country. We know that Nigeria, being from the African country, we have certain customs, we have certain lifestyles, we have that are not in tune with the kind of parameters that Transparency International use to measure performance, and because we have ostentatious lifestyle as a people. But having said that, I think the government should know that it is expected to give Nigerians good life, to make Nigeria safe for Nigerians.
All right, Alhaji Yabagi Sani, apologies to botting, but let me, apologies please. Let me ask you quickly, based on this report, Alhaji Yabagi Sani, just a moment, based on the report that we've seen today, and for those, the critics of this government who say that corruption is more in this government than it was in the past, are you one of those who believe that statement, that corruption is more now than it was before? Quickly, please.
Yes, I think I would align myself with the school of thought that this government has the capacity to fight the corruption we're talking about, but they are not doing it. That is the challenge. Like for instance, look at NMPC, look at the security outfits. If you talk about growing the economy, you must get your oil and gas sector properly organized so that you can be able to take advantage of what God has given to you, which is resources. But that is not the case today. The kind of corruption that we hear from oil and gas sector, we lose $1.5 billion in 6 months, and nobody has been taken to court. Nobody has come out to say that this is how this money was lost, and that is just the official figure. We don't even know the actual figure that is happening. The oil theft is still going on. So these are things that government must tackle. And then come to security. The security is very important to every economy, to the people, to the citizens of this country. Government has not been able to tackle the issue of security. And security is one thing that if you cannot, solve the issue of security, you can't talk about growing your economy, you can't talk about having unity and peace. So this is why the Transparency International is saying that government has a lot of gaps. There's a lot of drawbacks that this government has not addressed.
We are obviously out of time, but we need to close now. Let me allow Mr. Aheomu in 20 seconds to give us his final thought. What do you think is urgent for this government to do? Because if you say you want to fight corruption and people are assessing you and say the corruption is not being fought, in fact, it's getting worse. Where do you go from here? 20 seconds, please.
Well, the truth of the matter is we are aware that corruption is a problem in Nigeria, and the government is committed to dealing with it. So the primary thing we want to focus now is preventive measures. We want to move from pursuing people after they have carried out corrupt acts to ensuring that corruption is prevented from taking place.
We anchor on that note. Mr. Abiodun Aheomu, Special Advisor to the President in the Office of the Attorney General on the issues of white-collar corruption. Thank you so much for talking to us. Alhaji Yaba Gisani, presidential candidate of the ADP and the national chairman of the party. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming on tonight. Before we go, I'll take your two of your comments on Twitter, and we'll close the program. And these comments are coming first from Udubo Scott Nosa at Udubo Scott Nosa. He says, when Nigeria improve on the Transparency International standing, the government will accept. But when we decline, we will reject and start vilifying the process. This is tantamount to fraud itself by the Nigerian government. M. Wale at Moses Remimek says, the federal government is wrongly focusing political office holders only in anti-corruption fight. Deep-rooted corruption is still blatantly going on in government office. Nothing is being put in place against corruption. TI is absolutely right. With those your comments, we draw the curtains of the program tonight. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I'm Sean Kimale. Enjoy the rest of your evening.